was interesting about this one, when you looked at the detail, you could see quite clearly that there is concentric rings within each circle.
Let's
and
zoom in.
This is,
Yeah.
again, thanks to your research and programs, Matthew, where you've illustrated that this is a clear sign of a man-made crop circle, the combing effect. Okay?
Yeah.
And so you can see that very clearly on that one. So there you had a perfect example of a crop circle that is known to be man-made, and you can see all the hallmarks of a man-made crop circle with the combing features. So you had a good reference point there. So for me, that was quite a significant circle in sort of being able to discern the difference.
Sure.
I mean, I base my judgment on what I can see in the picture there. Based on what I discovered from the other crop circles, looking at the East Field one, the Scorpion one, where you can see those combing marks quite clearly. And then you look at this one, which is one of the most famous crop circles of all time, one that is held up as definitive proof that this is the real phenomenon. Because this one has that story of it appearing in daylight hours in a very short window of time, about 45 minutes.
Yes.
Then you zoom in on that one and you can see the same combing marks on that.
I'm so glad you said that then, because I was thinking, if we zoom in on this, we're going to see something quite interesting. And then you said it, so well done. Let's have a little look then. So we zoom in, and lo and behold, we get, as you say, marks visible in the flattened areas.
Yeah, you can see very clearly on that, even though the resolution is not brilliant on that photograph, it's from '96. You can still see those marks there that are evident of, board marks.
The width of a board mark going round and around and around, flattening, and it's creating something that probably wasn't very visible on the ground, but is much more visible from the air.
And certainly at the time, those kind of things weren't being picked up by anybody. If you think, well, if that one's man-made, then most of the other ones must be as well. Okay, do you want to have a look at the next slide?
Certainly. This is Polar Clock, June 2012 it's got on there. Yep.
Yeah. It was at this time I had a correspondence with one particular researcher who was talking about why they don't support the man-made aspect, and it's all criminal, it's all illegal activities, and it's immoral, all this kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I pointed out to her, I said, well, this particular formation is all over the internet at the moment, and there's all kinds of things being written about it, all kinds of theories as to what it means, etc., etc. And but my point was that this has got, to me, looking at that's got the same markings as the other ones. It's got the same indications of a man-made crop circle. It's clearly got those combing walk lines along there, and it is certainly not beyond most circle makers to do quite comfortably. So that's got every indication that that's a man-made formation, and nothing to me to indicate that could have been made by paranormal means or alien means or whatever. Yet this particular formation was everywhere at this time. There wasn't that many good circles around at that time, so this was getting a lot of attention. And my point was, well, if you're condemning circle making as illegal and criminal and etc., etc., everything bad about it, but then you're promoting it on your website and looking into deep meanings without having shown any evidence that it's come from any other source, then surely you're supporting that. Surely the emphasis must be on the researcher who believes it's coming from another source to prove otherwise, because the only method that's been proved crop circles are made is man-made.
Yes.
That's been proven. Okay? No other method of making a crop circle has been proven. So I think the emphasis has to be on the believer to show that it is not man-made before they actually start promoting them. I think it's a real moral dilemma. I think that researchers have to wrestle with. If they're condemning it as an illegal, immoral act, you surely then have to prove that it's not man-made before you plaster them all images all over the internet, and put them on calendars and talk about them at conferences, all this kind of thing, because that's how they're making their living at the end of the day. So I think that's a real issue that they have to sort out.
That's an interesting point. Yes, there's a disconnect between researchers and obviously the information exchange. There's no Circlemakers speaking at these conferences, and there's none of this stuff about the combing being there talked about. It's all about, you know, why the Pleiades is probably involved and which alien species is trying to talk to them, and you know, all this sort of stuff. And yeah, it's a bit of a strange one.
That's what I mean. It's very, very one-sided, and I think they're missing a real trick here with not looking at the man-made thing, as we'll get on to in a short while. But it's the hypocrisy that I find difficult, and the fact that there are circles that are clearly man-made, and anyone with half a brain can work out that people could do that, yet they are talked about and promoted as if it must have come from someone else, and people have no skills to do this, which is completely wrong. In fact, if you look at the next slide, I'll maybe just take that on a little bit further. That's just some of the crop circles that appeared this year, which are, as you can probably see, not some of the better ones of this year. And these are all clearly man-made in my view, and I think anyone that can't see that they're man-made, needs to take a look at themselves, I think. My point is that these ones all appeared on the major crop circle research sites. Okay, if they are really serious about condemning man-made formations as a criminal act, then why aren't these left off? Why are they included in their annual count of crop circles? That's what I don't understand. So it's almost as if the number of circles that appear is important. So we can say we've had 68 circles this year, even though 40 of them are crap. We've still got 68 circles, but they'll put the circle count up there, and they'll put every picture on here, and they'll put ground shots of every crop circle, but not mention anywhere that this is obviously a man-made one. So I think that's a little bit strange.
There's an argument made by people who run the conferences and call themselves researchers that there are never any half-made formations out there.
Yeah.
There's never anything half-made or rubbish out there. So because everything is so good and there's never any mistakes, that you should believe that therefore the whole thing must be paranormal. And as you've just shown, there's some pretty basic circles that you may agree or may not agree, but I mean you may agree, that look like they're either from newcomer teams, are a bit amateur, or maybe even have mistakes. They're actually quite rough. I mean, look at this one down the bottom here, which I'm highlighting. I mean, does that not look extremely rough? And what about this one up here? Does that look like somebody started to try and do something and they lost the plot of what they were doing and just decided to walk away and sort of made this mark to hide whatever they were trying to do and walked away? I mean, to me, these are the examples of messy, half-finished circles. So when these researchers don't talk about this in the conferences, and they will make these statements that there are no half-finished, no test circles, nothing like that, then I don't think they're telling the people the truth about these formations. So as you say, they're using them to their own benefit to make up the numbers.
Yeah, that's right. They'll quite happily include them on the website and include them on the crop circle count. And And that's what people remember. People don't remember those circles, but they'll say, oh yeah, there were 68 circles in England, so it was a good season. But
yeah, 68 circles, and you know, half of them could have been shit.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, there's another one I think is on the next slide, which I can just look at, which just illustrates the point a little bit more.
Okay, we're bringing up the slides, and we've got the square one. I think you were looking for this one. Yeah.
I mean, that's half decent. You know, it's a good attempt at a three-dimensional box, but to me, again, it's obviously man-made, and there are mistakes in that. It's a little bit skew-width, and you can see the lines, the combing marks, and things like that in there. But again, this one got a lot of publicity on a lot of the sites. I think as it was a very slow season to start, they were desperate to grab hold of anything and really build it up. And this one featured quite a bit. This is just an illustration of how that kind of formation is presented on some of these sites. Now you can see the image on the left is the same box, but it's from a different angle. And to me, that looks as if it's been adjusted slightly to make it look straighter. And it definitely looks better there. So I don't know if there's a little bit of photoshopping involved in that, but it certainly shows how the camera and the photography work can make a circle look better. And then on the right is, I found this an extraordinary image. This appeared on a Facebook feed that I got, and that overlaid the interior of the Great Pyramid of Giza on top of this box. And I was mystified as to how they made the connection and who made the connection. As to how that skew-width box represented the Great Pyramid of Giza and all its internal networks and so on. But it just showed to me, well, how these kind of things are built up and meanings are attached to them, that there's no basis in a lot of it. And overlays are put on. How did we get to that, to the Great Pyramid of Giza? I just can't figure that out. You could overlay anything on top of that and say that it fits.
By the way, Colin Andrews, I'm seeing, has logged in, and he says, Matt Robb just logged in and watching from the USA. So the great man himself there.
Hi, Colin.
Yes, and you know, sort of, he took that brave step as you've done to kind of tell it how it is.
Well, yeah, I've got a lot of respect for Colin. I've had communication from him a few times by email, and he's been supportive of what I'm doing, which is nice. And I think he's a brave guy that has gone out on a limb and changed his view on the crop circle phenomenon in terms of the possible outcomes, possible origins of it. And I have to respect someone that does that. You know, I think I wish there was more researchers that actually, went with their gut feelings and went, with the evidence and actually started to change their mind. But it seems like there is a wall up there with a lot of researchers that they will not go past this point. And it's like Dogma. And they're stuck within their own dogma and can't move past that. Even though I think sometimes they can see the truth, they don't want to go there. So I respect anyone that does do that. And there's been a few researchers that have changed their mind on this and gone public with it, and have had a hard time with it. And I think I don't think that's particularly fair. I think we really ought to be giving the harder time to the people that are not opening up to the evidence. Because to me, it's becoming clearer and clearer. And I think there's a much bigger story to uncover than who done it. So that's really what I'm looking at now. And I have a lot of similar ideas on this to Colin, like his thoughts on the crop circle phenomenon. So
interestingly, Colin is saying that he's writing a new book, I've just noticed, and some people are kind of interested in what it might be about. So Colin has then come on to say that I think he's talking generally about crop circles, that this is about a large range of paranormal subjects and the common association with human consciousness. So that's what he's writing about, I think. And much of what he's writing about, he goes on to say then, yes, is missing at the moment from what Rob is saying, or at least what he's heard so far. So I think what he's saying there is, do you know anything about the paranormal sides of crop circle making? And how that interfaces, people making circles, strange things happening in the circles. That sounds like something he wants to hear, perhaps. And have you got any experiences of that sort of stuff for yourself?
Well, not myself, but I have met with a few circle makers that have had a lot of experiences. Some of them this year. And that, to me, is a very interesting area of research. And I think it's where the real mystery is. And that's what we really ought to be to look at. This weird paranormal goings on around this circle was just ignored by most researchers, and instead somebody picked up on this idea that this was created in daylight hours. I think they were just basing that assumption on the word of a tourist, from what I can gather, that had just seen it and said it wasn't there earlier, which it was, because it was there for about 5 or 6 days prior to that. It just hadn't been noticed.
And again, I believe was backed up by the same pilot who said, well, I fly over there all the time and I never saw it. But I think a lot of people actually pointed out that it probably was there. Monique Klinkenberg has got footage, I think, which she's not given anyone high-resolution footage copies of. But I believe it was probably visible in that. But she was showing low-resolution versions and saying, well, you can't see it. And it's like, well, it is so small that it would be easy to miss. Yeah.
Yeah, it was very small. But it just, to me, it shows where the emphasis of the researchers is totally wrong. They would rather go with a half-baked story that shows that this, well, seems to show that this is a real or genuine formation of unknown origin, and yet ignore the much more interesting story, I think, about these shadowy figures and the weird paranormal events that these people experience. For me, that should be the first thing that a crop circle researcher should be looking at, and seeing what was that all about. Why did that happen to those people? Forgetting the fact that they were allegedly committing an offence there, that's not the big story here. The big story is what was going on there, and where did this come from, and why is it seemingly surrounding circle makers? That's interesting. And again, the idea of the real aspect was brought up by the fact that they found bent nodes in this formation, and to me that just shows that bent nodes can occur in any formation, because I know that was a man-made formation, yet it was held up as, again, proof that this is not a man-made formation. And again, the whole bent node argument just doesn't hold up for me. But the bent nodes thing just seems to be one of those things that, pardon the pun, it's like clutching at straws, isn't it? It's one of the things that they still seem to have that they can convince people with that a formation is genuine. Yet people who look into the bent nodes aspect and look at the real science behind it know that that can occur in crop anytime. It's just a natural process of phototropism. When the crop is flattened and starts to grow towards the natural light. It's certainly not the case that in all these formations that all of the stems are like that. They'll try to find one or two or a handful and use that to convince people that it's a genuine formation. And the same thing happened in the Yatesbury flower formation, the one I had a picture of earlier, which we didn't look at. But that was one that was initially regarded as a real formation and regarded as one of the best of the year.
I've got it on screen now, yeah.
Okay, and then it was revealed, that's the one. And again, they found bent nodes in there and said, well, here we are, here's proof that it's a genuine formation, and it's an impressive formation and the best of the year so far. It was about early July, I think, that one.
Yeah, and it was made by somebody who's come into channel, actually, which you probably know his name.
Okay, yeah. And it was later revealed that it was made by this team, led by this chap, Mr. Irving.
Rob Irving, yes.
But it was then proven that it was man-made. But still, you had the bent nodes, and that kind of argument was laid to rest, really.
I think the farmer was actually telling people against the team's wishes. He was telling people it was man-made, where he was supposed to keep. He was supposed to keep that secret, and he was telling them on the morning it had been created, and still with the farmer standing there telling every single person who went into the formation it was man-made. It didn't stop the stories, as you just pointed out. Okay, well, Colin Andrews is saying that he agreed with a point you made a little while ago. Colin is saying as well, we have reached the end of a major cycle for humanity, and the crop circle subject is just one part of this, and we are learning lessons at this stage. So, we're still learning, and still a lot more to learn.
I think so. Well, I think the crop circles has just led us into this wider understanding, and I think it's actually led us to actually look at ourselves more in terms of what we can achieve and how we can interact with this wider consciousness. And I think that's for me is the lessons that the crop circle phenomenon has brought. But I'm beginning to wonder whether it's sort of coming full circle, if you pardon the pun, because of some of the events that have been going on this year, and on a more negative basis. I'm beginning to wonder whether the phenomenon as a positive phenomena is sort of drawing to a conclusion there, and it's ready to move on. So what it moves on to, and how we develop from that, I don't know. But I almost think that we don't need it as much as we have in the past. I think it's been an awakening process.
Then Nasher is asking Rob, and see as we got, I think he's talking about you, not Rob Irving, but he says, Rob, what makes you think these were anything other than one group of people scaring another? And I suppose you might be talking about balls of light or the.
I think it's black.
I think he's talking about the people getting scared out of a formation and not finishing it.
Well, I think the fact is that these black figures have been seen by quite a number of people and have been seen to be non-physical. And on one of the occasions on this particular night, one of them actually went to hit this being with his board, and it went straight through. And the sort of noises...
Should get better quality boards. Sorry. The sort of noises. Carry on, sir.
The sort of noises they were experiencing were sort of unlike anything they'd ever heard. So and I know some of the people involved in that, and I don't think they would have just ran as quickly as they did if they thought it was just other guys. And certainly there was no physical traces of other people in the field, because they could hear these beings or whatever they were in the crop around them. Yet there isn't any sort of physical traces of that if you see the overhead shots taken afterwards. So I don't think it was a case of just other people scaring them out of the fields like that.
I was looking at some of the points that I made earlier on about some of the things that happened to you, because in preparation for the show we had a little chat, me and Rob, and I was amazed to find out that you'd had loads of crap for doing a talk on this subject to sort of a group, and it wasn't necessarily from the group you had the crap, it was from people that didn't want you to speak at the group. Could you sort of go a little bit further and tell us about that?
Yeah, okay, I won't go into names and stuff.
No, you can, that's fine.
Yeah, but well, I did the original talk at Truth Juice in Leicester. That's the one that's online. That was filmed professionally by a friend of mine. Then I was asked to do a couple other talks for other Truth Juices, and one was in Nottingham, and I was nearly prevented from speaking that particular talk, because there was a couple of people who had raised objections to me speaking there, which was a big surprise to me and to the organisers there. But we had to, it was a little bit cloak and daggers. We couldn't quite work out what the objections were and who was even making the objections for a while. But I was told that it was to do with some use of copyrighted material, and I had to remove that from the talk before I was allowed to speak. But I found out later, I did have some correspondence from the people that were objecting, and I think it was not so much to do with the images I was using, but just it was more to do with the fact that I'd used I'd used a clip in the video where this person is referred to, although not by name.
Goodness. Touchy person then, obviously.
Well, it was a bit hard to understand, really. But I think they were objecting mostly to the fact that it was, from what I could see, it was exposing a truth, which they objected to.
So stop you speaking about that, their footage, and hopefully it'll stop you speaking full stop. But it didn't have the desired effect.
When I don't like to mention people by name on this, because like I said to this person, it's not a personal witch hunt on this. I'm not interested in bringing people down and ruining their businesses and things like this. But if I hear of something that I think is a real untruth, then that's of interest to me, because I'm what I would call a truth seeker, and I'm trying to find out what's going on. And the revelation that this person made in the clip was that he knew that researchers also knew that people were making crop circles, but were not prepared to tell people. And to me, that's of real interest, because if something is known, it's a major importance like that if they know that most of the crop circles or all of the crop circles are being man-made, and they're not telling people that, then there is a major deception there. And I think that that needs to be exposed. I'm not necessarily, as I say, I'm not interested in exposing who said that, but the fact that that was done by a major researcher is a concern, and I think it needs to be aired. That's why I included that in the talk, because it basically illustrates that what the public are getting is not the truth. Yes. And I'm essentially interested in just getting to the truth of the matter. And it really is difficult when you've got people at every turn blocking the truth, which is that most people, most crop circles, if not all of them, are made by people. And we've got this major mystery that is being unraveled purely by recognizing the fact that people are making crop circles. And I would never have come across a lot of these stories of these weird paranormal events and the links with consciousness and all this kind of thing. If I had not looked into man-made crop circles, I'd still be thinking, oh, it's a mystery. Who's made this and why? And not getting anywhere. We can go round and round in circles forever, talking about who made this circle. Was it aliens? Was it something else? Was it supernatural phenomenon of some kind? Was it, Mother Earth? Well, it doesn't mean anything unless you've got, you can actually pinpoint who's done it in the first place. So by recognizing that people are doing this, takes us to the next level, which I think is much more interesting.
Well, it's certainly where we need to be going. Yes.
I don't know.
I think I should just to sort of bracket this so people don't lose the point. What Rob has said here, and this is an important point, and I'm going to re-highlight it, is that somebody tried to stop him doing a talk, and they used the business of you've got some sort of copyrighted material of mine, whatever. But the important point that Rob made, which I'm going to sort of say to you, if you want to try and find out who Rob is talking about, the important point he made was that this was a big researcher involved in the crop circle world, was trying to stop somebody talking about the man-made aspect. That's the important thing. I think I know who this person is, and I think people would be kind of interested to know who that person is. But as he says, Rob chooses not to disclose that on this program. But that's the important point, that there are active attempts by crop circle researchers to scupper, people's genuine research, such as Rob.
But I thought it was again a valid point that needed making, that there are people that are using the crop circle phenomena to their own end and are more interested in it as a business than as a truth-seeking enterprise. So that's why I included it in that video. And it was interesting at Truth Juice, they were saying they've had all kinds of controversial speakers there, but that's never happened to anyone else. They've never had anyone try and stop at all. So they were a little bit miffed by it. But all of that just added a little bit of spice to it as far as they were concerned. It just, to them, meant that what I was saying, I must be onto something. And it adds a little bit more credibility to it, I think. So I don't think they necessarily do themselves any favours by doing that. It just makes people a little bit more interested in why. Why does it?
Yeah, why they try to cover it up.
Yeah, but to me, it's not important who it is, and I don't think.
Fair enough.
In all honesty, I don't think people should go on a witch hunt. I think my own feeling is there's too much animosity between researchers and circle makers, and it's becoming like a warring factions. And I try not to align myself with either, to be honest. Although I've become much more sympathetic towards the circle makers' perspective. It seems like I'm more biased on that respect, but I don't want to align myself completely with one against the other, because I think the only way this argument or this debate is going to move forward is by meeting in the middle somewhere. And that's the only way I see forward. They've got to, people have got to trust each other. And I think if we keep flinging accusations at each other, it's not going to happen. It just becomes war, and they dig in their heels a bit more. And, you know, it just becomes stalemate.
I mean, it's the same sort of thing, the same sort of stupid dogmatic mentality, but who said, oh, you know, Jimmy Savile was never capable of doing that, so he didn't do it. And kept that mindset kept going and going and going. We don't want to see what might be standing right in front of us. We're not going to see it. And then, of course, it takes all this time and loads of people to come forward until the truth actually becomes quite apparent, which is a bit sad, but you know.
Well, some of these things have been apparent to a lot of people for a number of years. But it takes a lot to get through the truth sometimes. And it is about people being set in their dogmatic beliefs and unwilling to change them. And I think that's where we are with a lot of the researchers who have basically set their stall out, quite literally, in such a way that they're too far gone now. They can't turn back. And to now hold their hands up and say, yeah, okay, we now admit it's all man-made, it's going to be a very, very difficult thing for them to do. But I think the only way we're ever going to move on is by sort of making that a little bit easier for that to happen. So, as I say at the beginning, I sort of feel a bit sorry for them in that way, because I can sense the insecurity and I can sense that frustration. And I think I think things are going to change very soon, and more people are waking up to the whole crop circle mystery. And I'm hoping that the contribution I've made with the videos is going to play a part in that. I was expecting to be completely slagged off by the majority of people for going down the man-made aspect, but because there's this other element to it, people are sort of starting to think, well, I thought I was going to be disappointed in this because he's talking about man-made stuff. And at the end of part one, a lot of people are a bit disappointed, that the talks have done. People are going, so it's people then, But I'm saying, well, stick with it. Look at the second part and see what else there is. And then they're doing that and suddenly thinking, wow, this is more interesting than whether it's aliens or something else. And, I didn't realise there was that aspect. I didn't realise that Circlemakers had all these kind of experience. And this is phenomenal. This is mega. And I think, if people start to see that, the crop circle mystery, it's an entirely different mystery to what we thought it was. And that's what's frustrating about the mainstream, as I call them, researchers, who are plugging the same old agenda that doesn't move us forward. It doesn't help anyone. It might help them, with their, businesses, but that's about all it does help. And, a few American tourists might go away happy, but the world certainly isn't going to be a better place. And I see the crop circle mystery as much bigger than that. I don't like to say, see it as changing the world, but it's, I like to think big like that and see that, it can have an impact on that. Yes. So if we follow this line of research forward much more, then I think there's a lot still to be uncovered on this.